Every blade tells a story, but not the one you think. These weapons weren't chosen for glory or legend. They were engineered solutions to brutal problems, and each advantage came from necessity, not romance. You're about to discover why certain swords dominated specific battlefields while failing catastrophically in others. The short sword changed warfare forever, but not because of its blade. Between 12 and 24 inches long, it solved a problem that plagued ancient armies. How do you fight when you're packed shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other soldiers? Roman legionaries wielding the gladius understood something their enemies didn't. Longer weapons became useless in tight formations. Try swinging a 3-foot blade when there's a shield pressed against your left side and another soldier inches from your right. The gladius could be drawn fast, thrust between shield gaps, and withdrawn before an opponent even registered the attack. Its compact design meant soldiers could march for days without the fatigue longer weapons caused. In narrow city streets or below deck on ships, this blade dominated because it turned confined spaces into advantages rather than obstacles. Now here's what most people miss about the arming sword. From the 11th to 14th centuries, this 28 to 32-inch blade wasn't just common, it was strategic. Knights needed a weapon that worked with a shield in one hand, but the real genius was its adaptability. Facing an opponent in chainmail? Use cutting strikes? Fighting someone in early plate armor? Switch to thrusting techniques mid-combat. The cruciform hilt protected the hand while the pommel acted as a counterweight, creating balance that allowed warriors to fight for hours without their arm giving out. When mounted combat broke down and knights hit the ground, their lances became worthless. The arming sword became their lifeline. But as armor evolved, so did the response. The longsword emerged when metallurgy advanced enough to create plate armor that could stop most cuts. Ranging from 40 to 48 inches, it demanded 2 hands, and that's precisely where its power lived. The extended grip acted as a force multiplier. Physics took over. The same strength that produced a modest cut with an arming sword could now generate enough force to dent steel plate or fracture bones through padding. Here's the part that surprises people. Historical fencing manuals show long swords weren't just for cutting. Warriors used the crossguard to hook opponents, struck with the pommel, and employed the blade's flexibility to bind and control enemy weapons. Swordplay became chess with steel. Then someone asked, what if we made it even bigger? Great swords stretched between 50 and 72 inches, and their advantage was psychological as much as physical. Imagine facing a warrior who could control a 10-foot radius around themselves. These blades could cleave through pike shafts, the very weapons designed to keep swordsmen at bay. German mercenaries carrying 2-handed swords received double pay for a specific job, breaking pike formations. The extended ricasso, that unsharpened section near the hilt, allowed half-sorting techniques where the wielder gripped the blade itself for precision work. Despite weighing what you'd expect, the weight distributed along the entire length made them surprisingly quick in trained hands. The broadsword took a different approach entirely. Its wide, double-edged blade measuring 30 to 36 inches prioritized one thing: devastating cuts against unarmored targets. Scottish Highlanders in the 17th and 18th centuries made these weapons legendary, pairing them with small shields for an aggressive fighting style the basket hilt enabled. That elaborate hand protection wasn't decoration. It allowed warriors to commit fully to attacks without fear of losing fingers. The weight distribution favored powerful downward strikes, and from horseback, these blades ended fights with single blows. What if you could make production cheaper without sacrificing effectiveness? The backsword answered that question with a thick reinforced spine and single cutting edge. Measuring 30 to 36 inches, this design created something both lighter and stronger than double-edged equivalents. The reinforced spine prevented bending during forceful cuts while reducing manufacturing costs significantly. European armies from the 17th century forward adopted these as standard issue for exactly that reason. Economical, yet effective. The spine served another purpose too. Wielders could place their hand on the back of the blade during thrusts for additional control and precision. But some environments demanded radical specialization. The cutlass proved that weapons designed for specific contexts could dominate completely while failing everywhere else. Its short curved blade of 24 to 30 inches was engineered for one place: ships. The short blade prevented it from catching on rigging during boarding actions. The curve enhanced slicing efficiency, and that wide profile could hack through rope or wood when needed. Corrosive salt air destroyed lesser weapons, but the cutlass's robust construction endured. Ship blacksmiths could repair them with basic tools. Perhaps most importantly, merchant sailors forced into combat could learn to use one in hours, not years. Across different waters and cultures, the scimitar family dominated through pure geometry. These curved blades from the Middle East, South Asia, and North Africa measured 30 to 36 inches and shared one principle: maximizing slicing efficiency through curvature. The Persian shamshir, Turkish kilij, and Indian talwar each adapted this concept to regional tactics, but mounted warriors everywhere discovered the same truth. When you combine a horse's momentum with a blade's curve, the draw cut becomes devastating. Riding past an enemy, the geometry does half the work for you. Japan refined this concept to an art form. The katana, measuring 24 to 30 inches, emerged from centuries of metallurgical experimentation. Swordsmiths developed differential hardening, creating an edge hard enough to hold sharpness indefinitely while maintaining a flexible spine that prevented shattering. The two-handed grip provided exceptional leverage despite surprisingly light weight. Everything about its design assumed unarmored combat where a single precise cut could end a duel instantly. Speed and accuracy mattered more than brute force. European cavalry took the curved blade concept and militarized it. The saber, stretching 32 to 40 inches, became standard issue from the 17th century forward. Its balance point sat forward, concentrating force near the tip. From horseback, sweeping cuts combined the rider's speed with the blade's geometry for maximum impact. On foot, the curve still delivered deep slicing cuts with less effort than straight blades required. Cavalry charges became psychological weapons as much as physical ones. The falchion approached cutting power differently: mass concentration. Its cleaver-like blade widened toward the tip, placing maximum weight exactly where it struck. This allowed even minimally trained soldiers to deliver bone-breaking cuts. Common troops lacked years of fencing instruction, so the falchion gave them something intuitive. The thick spine rarely broke, and simple construction kept costs low. It represented democracy in lethality. Then everything changed. The rapier, measuring 40 to 50 inches, revolutionized personal combat in the 16th century. Forget cutting. This weapon existed purely for the thrust. Its narrow profile could slip between ribs or find gaps in armor that broader blades couldn't penetrate. Extended length meant skilled fencers struck opponents before they could close distance. Complex hilts protected hands while enabling sophisticated blade manipulation. Dueling became a science. The side sword bridged two eras. Measuring 36 to 42 inches, it sat between medieval cutting swords and Renaissance thrusting weapons. Unlike rapiers that specialized completely, side swords maintained effective edges while improving thrusting capability. Wider than rapiers but more tapered than medieval blades, they could exploit openings with either technique. Military and civilian contexts both valued this adaptability. Civilian fashion eventually demanded something even more refined. The small sword, with its extremely slender 30 to 36-inch blade, became essential for gentlemen in the 17th and 18th centuries. Nearly triangular in cross-section, these blades achieved unprecedented speed. Multiple thrusts could land before heavier weapons completed one action. Light enough to wear daily as accessories, they transformed dueling into displays of footwork and precision rather than strength. Some swords served purposes far removed from combat. The executioner sword, measuring 28 to 36 inches, featured a wide straight blade with a deliberately blunt tip. Everything optimized for one task: clean decapitation. The width provided stability, preventing twisting mid-swing. The blunt tip distinguished it visually from combat weapons and prevented accidental stabbings. Religious inscriptions transformed these into symbols of judicial authority rather than mere tools. China produced one of history's most unusual designs. Hook swords, typically 24 to 30 inches, ended in sharp hooks with crescent-shaped guards. The hook caught weapons or limbs, creating counterattack opportunities. Used in pairs, they linked together to extend reach or create double-bladed configurations. The crescent guard added another cutting surface. Only specialized martial artists mastered their complexity. One final weapon deserves mention, despite technically being a dagger. The swordbreaker, measuring 12 to 18 inches, featured deep serrations along one edge. When an opponent's blade struck those serrations, it could be trapped and potentially snapped through twisting leverage. Used in the offhand during rapier combat, it served as both parrying tool and weapon disabler, giving wielders critical moments to counterattack with their primary blade. Every design solved specific problems while creating new ones, each representing human adaptation to the eternal challenge of survival through superior tools. Understanding these advantages changes how you see historical combat. The gladius wasn't popular because Romans liked short swords. It dominated because tight formations made longer blades worthless. Arming swords succeeded through adaptability, not specialization. Longswords multiplied force through leverage when armor demanded it. Greatswords controlled space and broke formations that should have been impenetrable. Broadswords delivered fight-ending cuts when hand protection allowed full commitment. Backswords proved economical weapons could still be devastatingly effective. Naval warfare demanded the cutlass's specialized design. Mounted warriors across cultures independently discovered curved blades maximized slicing efficiency. The katana's construction represents metallurgical mastery, refined over centuries. Sabers militarized the curve for European cavalry. Falchions gave untrained soldiers intuitive lethality. Rapiers transformed dueling into precision science. Side swords bridged eras when both cutting and thrusting mattered. Small swords became the fastest weapons ever designed. Executioner swords served judicial rather than combat purposes. Hook swords offered versatility only masters could exploit. Even sword breakers, technically daggers, gave duelists defensive control through weapon trapping. None of these blades became legendary by accident. Each emerged because warriors faced specific problems and needed specific solutions. The sword that dominates one context fails catastrophically in another. That's not weakness. That's specialization. Now you know what actually made each design exceptional, stripped of mythology and Hollywood fiction. The next time you see any of these weapons, you'll understand the engineering decisions that determined who lived and who didn't.